listening to the Fayetteville 411 podcast, produced by the City of Fayetteville, where you'll get information about city government and the programs and services we provide. You'll get topics of interest and an inside look into the various departments that help keep our city moving. I'm Sherry Kropp.
And I'm John Salling. Thank you for joining us for the Fayetteville 411. Today we're talking to Jason Everage, the Chief Building Official for City of Fayetteville. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Glad I could be here this morning.
We're glad to have you. Thank you. And he's coming to us from our permitting division to talk about the changes coming for the building codes in North Carolina on January 1st.
There's a lot going on, so let's first explain to the listeners who don't know what is the building code. So the building code is enacted in law through the North Carolina General Statutes, state law for those who don't know. And what that is the minimum standard of construction that the state of North Carolina has set that throughout North Carolina is what this. Now, the building code is an engineering method. It's called the prescriptive engineering method, which means it's filled with shall not, minimums and maximums. Not a whole lot of interpretation. There are different engineering methods, and we deal with those as they come in, to discuss them, figure out, make sure that it meets the minimum safety guidelines that North Carolina has set forth. So we do work with different engineering methods, but your bread and butter every day is everybody's the North Carolina building codes, prescriptive code.
Okay. And you said how it's part of state law, but why did we want to make it part of state law?
So part of the state law is like this. So all this ties up to a lot of things. The number one thing is a minimum level of safety for the citizens and our guests, throughout North Carolina. Because that's all the code is it is a minimum level of safety. So if you meet code, it's the example is that I always use that if you're saying that your project met code, it's the same as saying I passed an exam with a D-. So you can do a whole lot more. This is just the minimum level that North Carolina says that you have to build to. The second reason is that, all this is also tied up to federal money. So there's a lot of FEMA money, federal grants, and like that, depending on that state's building code, how up to date it is, and so forth from that. Currently, we're under the 2018 code cycle. With January 1st, the North Carolina Electrical Code, which will be the 2024 North Carolina Electrical Code, and the 2024 North Carolina Residential Code will be in effect. The remainder of the codes come in effect July 1st. So that's another reason I wanted to sit here and talk to you, because it's weird how they're doing it this year. It's nothing that we can't handle. It's just weird because normally whenever they adopt the code, everything comes in effect on January 1st. But there's been some things going on with the state legislature that they felt they needed to delay it for 6 months on these as everything gets straightened out with the state legislature, the North Carolina Building Code Council, who, by the way, for those who don't know, is the only government entity allowed to add, delete, modify a code. The North Carolina Office of the State Fire Marshal is the only entity that can interpret a code.
And it's your role as a building inspector to go out to ensure that all of these minimum codes are being met and that everything is up to safety, right?
Correct. You can ask my staff, I tell them all the time, our job is it code or is it not? That's what we do. A lot of people think that we're substitute contractors or substitute designers or we do this or that. Nope, all our job, is it code or is it not? That's what we do.
Basically, you've got the book that someone else gave you that says this is what they need to do, and you're just checking that everything meets that level.
Right. And even with our new system that we've implemented, which is wonderful. So whenever we give you links to the state building code that you can look at online for free. We give you, when you issue a permit, we tell you what the most common things we turn down people for. Whenever we do an inspection, if it fails, we give you a picture of the failure. We tell you exactly what it is, kind of layman's terms or contractor's terms, and then we give the code section. So it's not like we're sitting here, this is wrong, move out the door. So we're trying to do everything we can to educate our customers so that they know, because the more they know, the easier it is for them, the quicker their project gets done. And truth be told, it's easier on us because we're not out here trying to turn people down. We're not trying to, take every penny out of your pocket to do this and that. We're just here doing the basic minimum that the state requires us on the state minimum building code.
And so to kind of break down what we've got coming up, so we talked about the new codes going into effect, some in January, some in July. The first one that we had on the list here was the electrical code.
Right. There's a new session law, and they put some code stuff in there, but it'll be effective January 1st. Not sure of everything they're changing, but I know of some big changes. Like if you have a sump pump underneath your building, say you've got a high water table, they'll put a sump pump in there. They're now requiring you to have a light, so if something fails, it's to alert the property owner, homeowner, whoever, so that they know there's something going wrong, because you don't want water building up underneath your building, because water is the most destructive force on earth. And we have quite a few times gone around here and condemned a building due to water damage. I mean, of course, fire, we condemn fire too, but most people don't understand the damage that water alone can do to your property.
Okay. With the code where it is now, what are some of the common issues that you guys find?
Just off the top of my head, electrical, a lot of stuff we see is that, they're not doing their fire stopping. They're using the wrong size wire. They're using a breaker that's not compatible for the panel box. So you see like that. It's like on building, we have a big issue with people who put in the wrong insulation, or they install the insulation correctly. Each trade has its set of stuff that, this is, and we try to inform everybody, this is the most common that we see. So every time we issue a permit for, whether it be mechanical, fuel gas, electrical, building, we put in the email that you get when you say, hey, you now got a permit issue, what are common mistakes on.
Is there some sort of checklist that you have that they can follow?
So for years now, even on the old system, if you looked at the back of the permit placard, and with our new system, when you print out your building placard, we have the list of required inspections and what each one means, so that you can go in sequence. Now, there's also other departments who's part of what we do that, has to look at it too. So it's a matter of knowing who has to look at what. But so I'm speaking primarily just on the inspection side, what we look at. If you're going to pour a foundation, we have to look at the hole before you put concrete in it, because we got to make sure it's the right sizes as dictated by code, make sure there's no organic material. Because if there's organic material or standing water, stuff like that, the concrete isn't going to settle right. Organic material decays. Now you've got an air pocket, which is going to cause that concrete to crumble. It's simple stuff like that.
You talked about one of the items that was going to change. What are some of the other big items that we'll see with the code changes in January?
So the number one big thing that's going to happen in January, so apartments is generally considered commercial. Well, the North Carolina legislature has said that now 3 and 4 apartment units, threeplex, quadplex, will be under the residential code. Not necessarily to make it easier, because it's two different things. You're trying to compare apples to oranges. So they're putting it in the residential code. Yes, there's a lot that they won't have to go through process-wise, which is a good thing. But, it's not like the residential code is easier than the commercial code. It's two different things. And just because they're putting 3 and 4 apartment into the residential code doesn't mean it's just going to be any 3 or 4. There are code sections that there has to be rated walls separating each one. So it's just not like I'm building 3 houses and just connecting them. Even duplexes and townhomes have their own safety issues that you have to do, rated walls, separation of occupancies, stuff to that effect.
Okay. But just that they are moving across to a new kind of set of rules.
Right, and it's something everybody's going to have to get used to. It's new. Like I said, the benefit of it is there's a lot less development actions they have to go through for this, but it's not like it's going to be simpler. It's not that. No, it's just less red tape, for lack of a better word, you have to go through.
Sure. And for buildings like these that already exist?
So as they exist now, I mean, so based on their approval, so it doesn't really kick in until they want to do a renovation. So when renovations come in, that's when it'll be addressed with the appropriate code cycle.
So you've talked about electrical. Let's move into the residential code. But how is that going to change?
Well, it's just like that. They're moving to 3 and 4 quads to the residential. I've seen the rough draft of the residential code. It's not available yet for anybody to buy. According to the Office of the State Fire Marshal, the residential code should be available in November, which then you've got every inspection department in the state, every contractor trying to order a code book, that it could be a supply chain issue when it comes to that time. But we're already trying to get things ready to order these code books so that we have them in hand so that we know we can enforce them. And worst come to worst, so like I said, there is a free version available online on our website at FayettevilleNC.gov. I believe it's a / or / whatever it is, permitting inspections. There's a wealth of knowledge on there where we've got processes, fee schedule commentary, so that people will know how the I even made a fee schedule calculator. We've got guidance documents there. I link to guidance documents from the state so that everybody can see what it is, that the reasoning behind it.
Okay. And what most sets residential code apart from the other codes we're mentioning, like building code or electrical?
So when I used to teach code at Fayetteville Tech, and I think I taught like 13, 14 years teaching code, the number one thing, and it was mostly inspectors, but I did have contractors, some design professionals, architects, engineers. There was a few I've had in there that was just your common citizen wanted to know, which is great. The first thing I always tell them is you turn to page 1. Because page 1, and you look at scope, that tells you what that code book is intended for. So right now in the residential code, if you turn to page 1, chapter 1, I used to be able to read the code sections off the top of my head, but I'm in a different world now, so I can do that with general statutes. So the residential currently is for single-family dwellings, duplexes, townhomes, and depending on the how many tenants you're going to have, some bed and breakfasts. So everything that doesn't fall into that scope, would fall to the building code, which is your more commercial code. So chapter 1, page 1 scope will always tell you what that code book is for.
And for people that have other questions or looking for additional information on some of the things that we're talking about today, where would you recommend they go?
So generally, we always recommend when, let's say, the general public, not your contractors, design who has questions, feel free to come, ask us questions. We have a position called our construction liaison, formerly development liaison, and her purpose is to answer questions for people who wants to get a permit. Once your project is permitted, your questions should go to the inspector who's inspecting that, because they're the ones who's been on site. So if you go to the construction liaison, she doesn't necessarily know what's going on in your project. She looks at the report and can tell you what's on the report. If you need a copy of the code section, she can print off that code section, hand it to you so that you're there. But she can't comment on what's going on. She hasn't been there. It's like saying people come in there and they ask our permit techs about code questions. Well, they can't answer it because their job is to issue permits. If you have a question about a permit, yes, that's the appropriate person. If you have questions about your job and inspection on your job, you need to talk to your inspector. You can call their office number. You can send them an email. In fact, our new system, you can send an email through your project so that it's part of the official record. And I speak for me and my inspectors when I say we prefer emails, because sometimes phone conversations you don't hear everything, or sometimes it gets misrepresented. So an email protects you, protects us, and it's a clear layout of whatever it is whatever question you're asking.
Yeah, it's easier to track the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Back when I started, there was a lot of in-person and stuff like that, but Fayetteville from that time to this time has grown exponentially. I mean, we're doing large numbers with limited staff. So it's part of my job to make sure that we do our state mandated. That comes first. You know, we have state mandates on when we're supposed to do inspections, how long we're supposed to do plan review, stuff to that. So that's my primary focus, is make sure we hit those timelines. Everything else is going to be like based on, well, if I do it for one person, do I have the staff and time available to do it for everybody? So if somebody has a question, if you ask me, I'm generally going to say, hey, that's a question for your design professional, architect, engineer, or your contractor. You know, if you have a question about a code, that's us all day long. You know, we're more than happy to discuss the code, but then we get a lot of questions about, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Well, I can't answer that. You know, because another part of my job is to make sure that we don't put the city in liability, make sure my inspectors don't go into liability. So it isn't that we don't know the answer, it's that we can't legally tell you the answer because, as I said before, an inspector is not a substitute contractor, nor are we a substitute design professional. You know, we can sit here and talk code all day. I'm right there with you. But when you start asking us, how do we do something? Well, we're not going to answer because I have to look out for the city and my inspection staff.
And their contractors, if they hire one, should know all of this.
According to the state of North Carolina, they do.
And if people want to track down a properly licensed contractor to make sure that they know what they're doing, where do they go?
So they can go to the state licensing boards. I have links on on my webpage, again, FayettevillenC.gov/permitting inspections. We have link to worst come to worst. Ask our permit techs, ask our construction liaison. We will do that. Say, hey, this person is properly licensed to do this project. You know, because we'd much prefer, you know, you check and then hire somebody that you saw from a Craigslist ad or something like that. Hire them, and then come to find out they weren't licensed to do the job. Now you're stuck. You know, and I've recommended people, you need to file a complaint with the state license board. Walk across the street, go say at Fayetteville PD, talk to a fraud officer. You know, there's a whole lot of stuff because the state law is very clear on who can do what and so on and so forth to that effect.
Well, it sounds like they can find out just about anything that they need to know by visiting the website.
I try very hard to keep that updated with what limited time I have to update it. And, of course, there's been a whole lot of stuff that's been happening legislatively that I haven't had the opportunity to update on, and then with the new code cycle. So come January 1st, I'm probably going to have to take about a couple of days and do nothing but update our webpage so that we have the proper information out there. To the most part, it is still mostly accurate. There are little things here and here that have changed, but generally speaking, our information is still relevant.
Well, it sounds like you have a real passion for what you do. I can tell you could talk about this all day long. But I think we've come to our close on the podcast. So we want to thank you for being here today and trying to give us a little bit of clarification on some of the changes that are upcoming. And for people that are starting new projects, whether it's residential or commercial or whatever, they need to go to the webpage and check it out and get all that information. And then they can just call you if they have additional questions, right?
Absolutely.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this episode of the Fayetteville 411. The Fayetteville 411 is just one of the podcasts that the city produces for our podcast channel, Radio Fayetteville. Be sure to subscribe to Radio Fayetteville, available on your favorite podcast streaming platforms.
You can also listen to every podcast that Radio Fayetteville has to offer by downloading the Fay TV streaming app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV. You can view all of our video content by visiting faytv.net. And to get information about city services, go to our webpage at fayettevillennc.gov. Thanks for joining us.
And again, thank you, Jason, for coming on.
Thank you.